The church waged war on witches 500 years ago, driving some into hiding, but it continued chasing them in the name of justice, burning Serena, the Moon Witch, at the stake on charges of spreading plagues. Yet her flames never died out. Instead, they blazed within the witches' hearts, fueling vengeance. The witches rose up to take revenge, prompting the kingdom of Winias to recruit mercenaries to exterminate them. By the year 526, people began learning sorcery without understanding real magic. When the church captured one of those learners and crucified him, people were bewildered, wondering where the witches were hiding. They blamed witches for destroying the world, burning fields, and killing families, while the priest angrily proclaimed that witches brought chaos and must be burned. At that moment, a mercenary stood silently with his face hidden under a cloak, listening to the priest's sermon. Later, as he walked through the market to buy something, a gang assaulted him. When they uncovered his face, they found a half-human, half-beast visage, calling him a monster and shooting arrows at him. He fled, but one man pursued him, and they exchanged knife blows. People believed hybrids were produced by witches' magic, so everyone tried to capture him. An archer fired from above, but the hybrid sent the arrow back, killing the archer instantly. A knight then charged on horseback, and the hybrid knocked him off with one strike. In the past, the hybrid had asked his mother if she feared him, mentioning that people said awful things about him, but she smiled and said his fur was fluffy, his eyes were round, and his mouth always looked like it was smiling. In the present, a hunter attempted to catch the hybrid but was startled when he saw him a white-furred cat-like figure. At first, the hunter mistook him for an animal, but then he recalled rumors of the Black Doom Beast, who allegedly wiped out a whole gang alone. His white fur turned black by their blood. The hybrid denied it, wishing the church would wipe out witches who corrupt the land. The hunter agreed the forest was chaotic, even wild boars had grown hostile, then revealed something strange about his own face, and noted that a beast hunting witches was welcome. The hybrid dashed off, and the hunter aimed a magical arrow at him. The arrow exploded, sending the hybrid tumbling down a hill and crashing into rocks. He landed in front of a witch who was cooking a meal. He accidentally knocked over her soup, making the witch glare at him and ask how he dared ruin her meal after all her effort. He stood, apologizing and warning her of the danger trailing him. Suddenly, she noticed the arrows heading for him. He picked her up and ran. She asked why they were hunting him, and he said witches don't need a reason to hunt a monster. She grabbed onto a tree branch from his arms, slipped down, and suddenly unleashed a magical force that seemed to freeze time. He froze in shock, wondering if she was also a witch. Calmly, she said she made meaning from nothing and created matter from emptiness. She was the witch of black clay. Hearing that, he ran away immediately. Later, he was preparing to cook when she appeared, helping herself to his soup. He asked what she was doing, and she pointed out he was the one who ruined her soup first. When he snatched his spoon back, she demanded he host her as compensation. He refused, saying that was unfair to a witch. She asked why he hated witches, and he gestured to his face, saying his appearance alone was reason enough. Gathering his belongings, he left, but she confessed she admired the human face hidden behind the fur. He stopped and asked if she truly saw his human face. She said she wouldn't be worthy of being called a witch if she couldn't see a hybrid's real face. Witches, she explained, had merged animal souls with human souls to create powerful soldiers, and supposedly 1 million such hybrids were created during the previous war. The hybrid repeated in shock that witches had created hybrid soldiers. She warned him to hand over his soup before she cast a spell on him, and he told her to do whatever she wanted. She flopped onto the ground, begging for food because she was starving. After a moment's thought, he offered her some. She asked for more, so he insisted she first explain what she was doing there, in exchange for another bowl. She shared that she was searching for her companion, called 13th, who went on a mission but had gone silent. The hybrid wondered if 13th was part of the witch's rebellion trying to seize the kingdom, declaring he wouldn't help him in that case. She said it had nothing to do with rebellion. He was after a stolen book with no existing copies. If it fell into the wrong hands, it could bring disaster and end the world. The hybrid jeered that he was terrified, and she responded that even a single chapter from that book could destroy everything. He scratched his head, asking her what exactly she wanted. She said she needed to continue her journey quickly, but witch hunters kept chasing her, so she needed a bodyguard. He refused at first, insisting his goal was killing witches, not protecting them. She promised he would be paid, and he shouted that he hated witches. She asked if some witch had attacked him before, and he said he hated them all because they were hunting him. His life was total chaos filled with blood because he looked like a monster. Humans also turned him away from their barns and towns. She then asked if he wanted to become human again. He asked if she could do that, and she said it was easy if he agreed to protect her. Suspicious, he asked if she'd trick him later and slit his throat. She replied that if she wanted him dead, she would have done it already. She drew out a witch's contract, written in blood, warning him that those who violated it would die. She mixed her blood with his, assuring him she wouldn't kill him, and after he finished protecting her, she'd turn him human. He asked if she was afraid of him, and she commented that his fur was amazing, his eyes keen, and his mouth charming, always looking like a smile. He remembered his mother's words. Then she said he smelled like a grave, reminding her of the witch's hideout in Moonbow Foresta, dark, damp, cozy place. Suddenly, the hybrid recalled how a gang invaded his home, demanding his head, and how his mother refused to hand him over. When the witch finished writing the contract, He interrupted, saying he didn't need one, pressing his thumb to hers in the mercenary's oath. He asked for her name, and she replied, Zero. When he tried to share his own, she told him not Tosh, only called her servants by name, so Mercenary would do, implying that as a witch, she could use his name to force him into lifetime servitude. That night, he dreamed of slaughtering people until he was drenched in their blood, then awoke to find her asleep on top of him. Jumping up, he caused her to fall with a grumble. She complained she just wanted his warm, fluffy coat. He yelled at her to wake up, calling her shameless. She jokingly asked if she had tempted him, then told him to think of her as a pillow and himself as the floor. They ate a meal together, and she deduced that 13th was likely in the royal capital, Blasta, at the center of the witches' uprising. They headed there to look for him, and the hybrid asked how dangerous the book really was. She answered by asking what he knew about sorcery. He mentioned the strange circles people drew, and the demons they summoned. She pointed out the witch chasing them before had fired glowing arrows without drawing circles while running. That was real magic. She drew a circle on the ground to demonstrate sorcery, chanting incantations. Alarmed, the hybrid ducked behind a fallen tree, asking what she was doing. She caused an explosive burst of magic, bringing forth a small flying creature and then summoning a huge wild boar. She called it perfect timing and ordered her summoned imp to attack. It flew over and blasted into the boar's head like a fireball, making the boar smash its skull into a tree. She promised to show him magic, surrounded herself with a glowing aura, and conjured ropes that bound the boar. She explained she'd harness the power of words to summon demonic force without circles. With a wave of her hand, she toppled the boar. She asked if it was edible, and he replied that it was delicious but considered forbidden game. She undid its bindings and let it go. She then said the stolen book contained the essential theories of magic that granted witches their power, called the magic law of the demonic pact. Suddenly, she spotted a witch lurking in a tree. She fired a glowing arrow and knocked him down, revealing he was just a child. She scolded him for sending a wild boar to attack them, and he admitted he knew he needed the hybrid's head to gain strength. Reciting incantations, he created a circle of magical flames spreading around him. Zero swiftly canceled his spell, then countered with her own, causing the flames to vanish in an explosion. She told him never to underestimate her. She flicked her hand, binding him with ropes. Once he was seated, she approached him, asking where he'd learned magic. He answered that he learned from Zero's group. Their sacred text was the Zero's Grimoire. She informed him that she was Zero, the author of that text. At that moment, Albus introduced himself to Zero and the Mercenary, prompting the Mercenary to object that witches should keep their names secret. Albus argued that it was just an alias. When Zero discussed her magic book, Albus confirmed it was the Zero Group's holy scripture. She pressed him on the book's location, and he said it was in a hideout at Laddite Village on the Formicum Road. Zero ordered them to hurry there. On the way, the Mercenary asked why she didn't reveal the book thief's true identity. She replied that she didn't trust how Albus might react. Later, Albus mentioned that Serena's granddaughter had joined the Zero Witches, making the Mercenary wonder about the group's leader. Albus suggested the granddaughter might be leading them. In more conversation, the Mercenary reiterated his hatred for witches, and Albus accused him of disrespect. If he felt that way, why was he traveling with Zero? The Mercenary said he was only hired muscle. As they traveled, Albus found a ring in a spring, and Zero told him to wear it, suspecting it belonged to an ancient witch. He said his magic was weak and needed a powerful sacrifice, then asked the Mercenary for help, who refused, calling him stingy. Zero joked that the Mercenary might cry, which the Mercenary hotly denied. They encountered a farmer steering a cart, who asked where they were headed. The Mercenary answered he was out hunting witches. The farmer thanked him, saying witches had ruined the markets, and pointed to his village, claiming they'd be welcomed there. While chatting, Zero asked if tomatoes could be eaten straight from the field. The farmer told her they were good, fresh or in stew, and tossed some to them. Proceeding carefully so no one would realize they were witches, they met a man who offered to guide them to a deserted house outside town. He explained he used to be a mercenary but took an arrow in the knee. They passed a graveyard created after a witch raid that killed babies and the elderly. He noted that buildings can be rebuilt, but the scars on people's hearts never heal. He led them into the house, saying an old woman nearby might help, though she was eccentric. They found a crowd around her because she'd lost a keepsake ring. One villager wished Serena could appear to help. The man apologized to the mercenary, mentioning recent thefts. Suddenly, someone recognized the ring on Albus's finger, accusing him of stealing it. The man grabbed Albus and asked for rope to tie him up. The mercenary explained they found it at the spring, but the man refused to believe him, insisting they be questioned for the village's safety. Then the old woman told everyone to stop. The mercenary apologized for causing trouble, but Albus grew angry at the villagers' comments about Serena, stating she seemed good at first, just like them. The villagers realized he was a witch and became enraged, leading to a fight. The mercenary was stabbed in the arm, grabbed Albus and Zero, and fled. The leader ordered his men to give chase. The three hid in an abandoned shack, where Zero healed the mercenary's arm with magic, mentioning how certain spells could take a year to cast without her book's shortcuts. The mercenary questioned whether Serena truly spread plagues, plagues, and Zero said it was unlikely, seeing how the moon witches depended on locals for survival, making it irrational to harm them. Outside, Albus overheard their discussion, and Zero remarked that Serena's missteps provoked the townspeople, causing them to lash out, and the witches sought revenge in turn. Near them, the man ordered his pursuers to show no mercy to the beast and burn it. When the pursuers approached, the mercenaries sensed them and fled with Zero and Alps, warning against fighting. However, one attacker emerged from a cave and raised his spear toward the mercenary, who defended himself. Zero used magic to put the two attackers to sleep, but the mercenary objected, fearing the church knights would pursue them. From a distance, they saw villagers following their tracks. Suddenly, the old woman appeared with her lantern and instructed them to follow her, guiding them to an escape route toward Formicam. The mercenary thanked her, wondering how she knew their location. She pulled out his fur and explained she had used it in rituals to find him, but couldn't locate her missing ring. Alps removed the ring and offered it to her. She thanked him and revealed she had received it from Serena, who before her death had instructed her to give it to her human lover and live in hiding to protect him. When Serena was captured and burned, she tried but failed to save her. After finishing her story, she remarked that Serena was a great sorceress, apologized to Alps for accusing him of theft, bid them farewell, and they continued on their way. At the city gate entrance, Alps urged them to hurry before the gates closed at sunset. The mercenary carried Zero and ran, saying he didn't intend to spend the night outside the walls. The guard asked everyone to show travel permits. The three stood in line waiting to cross the Formica gate, and when their turn came, the mercenary presented his permit, explaining he was heading to the capital after hearing the kingdom was gathering mercenaries to hunt witches. The guard asked about his companions, and Zero quickly replied they were slaves. Alps played along, saying they were happy to serve their master and take care of him. The guard requested passage fees, mentioning that a nearby town had recently been attacked by witches, and welcomed them if they came to hunt them. After crossing the gate, the mercenary hit both of them on their heads for claiming to be slaves. Zero admired the place she had heard so much about, while Alps commented that it was bustling, as all Vigna's merchants passed through it. Zero suggested exploring and eating, but the mercenary insisted on finding her new clothes first, pointing out that her current appearance wouldn't even get them a stable to sleep in, let alone an inn. She replied that she didn't mind camping outdoors, as sleeping on his fur was enough, but he refused and asked if she had other clothes. Alps inquired how she had traveled like this, and she answered that whenever she found a river, she bathed and washed her clothes, ate wild fruits, and hid in caves when it rained, away from human dwellings. He asked if she had money, and she pulled out a collection of valuable jewels. The mercenary ordered her to hide them immediately and sell only the smallest one to buy clothes. She looked at him with surprise, calling him the good man, as he hadn't tried to steal her jewels despite being a mercenary. He replied that he wouldn't do it now, but might change his mind in the future, as he was a mercenary who killed for money. In the store, Zero chose a beautiful dress, and Alps and the mercenary described her as a princess, but she requested something easier to travel in. The seller presented her with a revealing dress, angering the mercenary. Alps intervened and suggested they look themselves. Eventually, Zero selected a sturdy, lightweight dress, and Alps helped her choose appropriate shoes and socks. The mercenary ordered her to change clothes in the store, but she boldly removed her clothes in front of them. The mercenary shouted angrily and quickly carried her to the fitting room. From behind the curtain, Zero remarked that he should treat his employer better, but he sharply asked her to show some modesty. After wearing her new clothes, Alps complimented her, while the mercenary commented that she looked better. He asked her to get rid of her old clothes, but she considered that harsh, as her clothes had been her travel companions. He replied that journeys were full of goodbyes. The seller then offered to take the old clothes in exchange for the new dress, and Zero threw her clothes to him without hesitation. They left the store, and Alps separated from them to explore the city. Zero tried to wander around, but the mercenary stopped her, insisting on finding lodging first. Some places refused to accommodate them, claiming no vacancies, while others told them their services were for humans only. Zero wondered why they rejected beasts. The mercenary asked if she knew about the sudden urge that drives beasts to eat humans, and she replied it was like a state of possession. He pointed out this might be why innkeepers refused to accommodate beasts. During their walk, the mercenary saw a beast frightening a wandering slave girl. He attacked it, thinking it intended to devour her. Later, a wolf came with two girls and took the slave away. He told them about an inn in an alley that housed beasts, so they headed there. The mercenary liked the room, while Zero commented that the innkeeper's kindness was due to her beauty. The mercenary asked her to take a separate room, which annoyed Alps because the mercenary would share the room with him. The mercenary frightened Alps, saying he might cut off his head while sleeping. Alps challenged him to try, and the mercenary chased him around the room, making Alps cry out for Zero. During dinner, Alps helped her stuff bread, which she enjoyed eating, and she asked the waiter for a wild boar meal with lots of cheese. When Alps fell asleep, the mercenary left in disguise, Zero followed him to a tavern, reproaching him for trying to enjoy nightlife alone. The wolf entered, approaching Zero, admiringly inquiring about her beauty, and offering the mercenary to trade her for 3 witches. He refused, insisting she was his employer. After the wolf left, Zero commented that those women weren't witches, and the mercenary replied that he knew. He sneaked into the wolf's castle to free the women and found them bound. The wolf confronted him, and the mercenary explained they weren't witches. The wolf replied they only appeared that way because witches were skilled liars, so he hadn't killed them but only detained them and refused to release them. A violent duel broke out between them, with both showing high combat skills, but the mercenary eventually prevailed, forcing the wolf to surrender. He freed the girls with Zero and ordered them to go wherever they wished. In the morning, Alps woke up screaming to see Zero sleeping on top of the mercenary. The mercenary commented that this was normal, and Zero simply replied, "The mercenary is hers." The mercenary decided to bathe, and Zero helped him, saying taking care of such a large body was certainly tiring. Children saw them, and one guessed she was his slave. Zero noticed them, saying they were staring curiously at a furry beast covered in bubbles. The mercenary looked at them and shouted to scare them away. He told Zero he was teaching them not to approach a beast, so she asked if it was a man who created beasts, because she sensed a human spirit inside him despite him being a beast. He said he didn't know. As she was telling him he was completely clean, Alps came to take him grocery shopping, but he laughed when he saw him shrunk due to wetness, and with a magical gesture, Zero dried his fur. He was amazed, pointing out it would have taken him half a day to dry it. She reminded him of his anger at her in the clothing store for abandoning her modesty, yet now he was exposing himself to her. He remembered he was naked and was shocked. They walked around while he was angry until a clothes seller blocked their path and offered Zero a revealing dress at no cost if she would wear it in front of him. The mercenary quickly pulled her away from him. They met the gate guards on their way who greeted him, then passed by a bakery where they tasted bread, and Zero bought some. When she paid the shop owner with jewels, he refused them as he didn't have enough to cover their value, so Alps intervened and paid instead. Suddenly, Zero saw lovers in an awkward position and wondered why their lips were stuck together and if it was some kind of ritual. The mercenary told her they were showing their love for each other. She said she was born in a cave and had ventured into this world only recently, spending her life in books and focusing solely on research, which is why she was ignorant of such things. On the way, they saw the same children they had met earlier, but a beast attacked them, injuring a girl in her foot. Zero approached her and ordered the mercenary to treat her. He applied an ointment for the swelling, but told her she needed to see a doctor. While he was applying it, Zero secretly healed the child with her magic and told her to stand on her foot. The girl said the pain was gone. The mercenary looked at Zero suspiciously, but she addressed the child, confirming that the mercenary had treated the wounds. The girl thanked him and was happy that he was a kind beast, but he ordered her not to trust beasts. One of the children took off his necklace and offered it to him as thanks, then bid them farewell. They continued on their way, picking fruit from a garden full of flowers, walking in the rain, and resting in a cave at night. Time passed, and Zero happily told the mercenary that she enjoyed his company and was glad to have met him. He ordered her not to get easily attached to people, especially like him. She wondered if her talk bothered him, and he replied that he didn't know. She said she would talk to him a lot from now on, and asked him to try kissing. He ran away from her, and Alps told him his face was red with embarrassment. They continued on their way, and Zero asked Alps how long until they reached Latit. He replied that half the journey remained. The mercenary commented that if they hadn't dawdled, they would have already arrived, but now they would have to camp for the night. Alps asked the mercenary to carry him like Zero, but the mercenary asked if he'd forgotten his quest for his head. Zero refused to get down, saying she was the mercenary's employer and deserved her seat on his shoulder. Angered by her calling his shoulder a seat, he put her down on the ground. They stopped to fish at a lake, and Zero caught many fish with her magic. Alps tried magic but failed, so Zero helped him imagine well-salted grilled fish prepared by the mercenary. She instructed Alps to close his eyes and visualize, describing the salted fish in detail, then commanding him to use his magic at the right moment. He managed to lift fish from the lake, but the water drenched the mercenary, causing his fur to shrink. Zero lit a fire, and they enjoyed grilled fish and the mercenary's soup. Alps suggested the mercenary should become a cook instead of a mercenary. He replied that he dreamed of opening a tavern when he became human. Alps asked if he was born in his current form, and he confirmed. When asked how he survived since sorcerers suffer so much, the mercenary said he had forgotten the past. When the mercenary inquired about Alps's parents, Alps said they died long ago. His mother was targeted by witch hunters in his childhood, his father was killed trying to protect him, and his grandmother raised him. When asked about her parents, Zero said she knew nothing about them, suggesting she might be the child of cave dwellers. She grew up in a cave surrounded by magic materials, studying volumes and books with her master and companions. Magic was an academic field for her, and sorcerers were academics. She offered to teach the mercenary magic, but he declined, saying he had his strong muscles. She responded that if he wanted, she would train him herself, giving her a reason to stay with him always. He sarcastically commented that she seemed to want to stay with him forever and quickly walked away. Alps told her the mercenary was escaping because he didn't want her to see him embarrassed. On the road, Alps described Latit as a small, vibrant village where he wanted to settle as a fortune teller when witch hunting ended. Zero said they would try the famous walnut bread upon arrival, but the mercenary reminded them of their primary goal, obtaining Zero's book. Alps mentioned having an elderly friend who managed the kitchen in the hideout containing the book who could help them. Soon, Alps's dog, who accompanied him whenever he visited Latit, appeared. Suddenly they smelled fire, and the dog ran ahead with Alps following. While following the smell of fire, they came upon a pile of corpses. The mercenary wondered if bandits were responsible, but Zero recognized a necklace on one of the dead, similar to Alps, belonging to Zero's sorcerer group. The mercenary was puzzled by the village's cleanliness despite the numerous bodies. Zero explained they were killed by a spell called Phlegis, a burning spell whose flames don't spread. When they reached a house in disarray, the mercenary asked if it had been hit by a tornado. Zero replied it had been subjected to the Lament spell, which turns winds into sharp blades capable of easily tearing things apart. They passed a man crushed by a concrete column, and Zero explained this was the effect of the Redist spell, which turns rocks to dust, though its user was a novice sorcerer. When they saw a corpse fused with a rock, she commented it was the Etrax spell, which uses earth and wood to create a wall. They continued through the corpses until they reached Alps, who was crying beside one of the bodies. The mercenary asked why Zero's sorcerers were attacked. Alps explained there are different groups of sorcerers. While Zero's sorcerers accept any talented person who follows other sorcerers use their powers for evil, like the vagrant sorcerers who were expelled from the group and attacked villages for plunder. They came to this village to steal Zero's book to increase their power, but Zero wondered in surprise if the vagrants were responsible, who killed them. The mercenary suggested they killed each other. Suddenly, the dog rushed to protect Alps from a surprise arrow. They guessed the attackers were thieves. Zero tried to confront them, but the mercenary refused, wanting answers before killing them. He grabbed his sword, attacked the archer, knocked him from his elevated position, then chased his two companions and caught one, discovering they weren't responsible for the massacre. When asked what happened, the thief said he saw a sorcerer walking through the village streets, killing other sorcerers. The mercenary asked if the sorcerer was from the vagrants or Zero's group. The thief replied he didn't know. The sorcerer had gone to the church. Zero smelled a Formicom children's amulet and ordered the thief to go there for protection. Alps led them to the hideout, where they were shocked to find Zero's book missing. The mercenary wondered if the vagrant sorcerers stole it, but Zero didn't rule out the possibility that some of Zero's sorcerers themselves fled with it. Alps guessed the book might be in the Forbidden Room. Zero opened it with her magical ability, but they didn't find it there. They decided to search elsewhere, and during this, Zero asked Alps if Serena's granddaughter was among the dead, but he wasn't sure what happened to her. The mercenary thought she might have fled with the book. They met an injured old man known to Alps. Alps tried to heal him, but the old man said it was too late and warned him about a tall man who entered the hideout. When the sorcerers tried to shoot arrows at him, he turned them to dust without even looking at them. It wasn't clear how he did this. Before dying from his wounds, the old man wished for Alps to revive the Zero sorcerer group and lead it someday. Alps broke down crying, and Zero comforted him. They entered the church hall, where Zero noticed Zero's sorcerers had tried to resist, while the vagrant sorcerers were killed immediately and their magical power taken. She wondered about the killer's identity. Alps answered that the only person with such power was the 13th, the tall intruder the old man mentioned. Suddenly, a glowing magical weapon appeared. Zero recited a forced summoning, and they fell into the depths. During their fall, the mercenary saw himself amid an ice storm. People were talking about him because he had killed 50 people alone, and someone was betting on his death. Many corpses surrounded him while his body turned black. When he opened his eyes, he was still falling and called out to Zero. She told him they were being transported to another location. Fearing falling to his death, she asked him to extend his foot to steady himself on the ground, instructing him to breathe slowly and take her hand, with which he had exchanged a blood oath. He successfully stabilized himself on the ground in a place like a dungeon. Zero said only 2 people could use this exceptional spell, her master and the 13th. Suddenly, the 13th himself appeared, explaining he hadn't summoned them by his will. Whoever speaks his name inside the church is summoned to this place. He asked why she left the cave. She replied she went looking for him, and he reminded her she had promised to stay because she would be in danger in the outside world. Alps questioned her relationship with him, noting he was the state's sorcerer. The mercenary objected, saying the state fights sorcerers, so it's impossible they would hire one. Alps said the 13th betrayed the sorcerers. The 13th justified his actions, saying he was trying to restore order and suppress chaos caused by sorcerers who rejected the king's decision, forcing him to fight them on the king's orders. In return, the king helps him find the book. The mercenary asked if he found the book after all this. Enraged, the 13th struck the ground with his staff, releasing a powerful magical force that nearly hit the mercenary, but Zero intercepted it. She told the 13th that the mercenary belonged to her, and if he scratched him, she would feed him to demons. He challenged her to a magical duel, saying perhaps her power had changed in 10 years, and they began a battle of magic, each showcasing their skills. Alps told the mercenary they should escape, while the mercenary guessed the fight would completely destroy the place. The magical power in the place increased, and the fire became confined to a straight line between the two sorcerers. Alps and the mercenary huddled together. The mercenary asked if Alps could do anything with his magic. Alps replied he didn't have that power. The mercenary decided he had no choice but to either pull Zero away or crush the 13th. Otherwise, the whole place would burn with their magic. Alps warned him against being reckless. The 13th caused more chaos, and the mercenary stood watching in amazement. But suddenly the fighting stopped because it was dinner time. Zero wouldn't fight on an empty stomach. The 13th promised to prepare delicious lamb, but she requested potato soup instead. The mercenary and Albus stood shocked that the fight ended without intervention, as if nothing had happened. Afterward, the 13th escorted them to the dining hall and ordered his servants to prepare the table and welcome them. When the mercenary asked about their location, he learned they were inside the royal palace in the capital, Blasta. Zero tasted the soup and found it terrible, blaming the 13th for his love of sweets. He responded that sugar was necessary. The mercenary asked if they were friends, and she answered that they were from the same homeland. She justified his attack on them, saying he didn't intend to fight. The 13th explained that the force summoning was due to their actions, and his attack was meant for the little sorcerer, but the mercenary intercepted it and was unintentionally harmed. She asked if he thought she would accept his excuses, and he replied that he was telling the truth. Meanwhile, the mercenary asked Albus why he wasn't eating, and he responded that the food might be poisoned. The mercenary assured him it wasn't poisoned. He knew because he was a beast. After the servants brought dessert, Zero guessed it would be tasteless, but as soon as she tried it, she lowered her head, worrying Albus. Surprisingly, she declared it delicious and blamed the 13th for not serving it first. He replied that dessert comes at the end, and she should know that, but she protested that eating delicious food on a full stomach was unfair. She called him stubborn and asked about his position as state sorcerer, as he had left to search for the magic book. He explained that the thief who stole Zero's book had spread its knowledge throughout Winius, manipulated her group, and spread chaos throughout the kingdom. He had allied with the king to help hunt sorcerers in exchange for the king showing him where the magic book was, but despite his efforts, he found nothing. Albus angrily called him absurd, pointing out that Zero's sorcerers protected other sorcerers from witch hunts. The 13th responded that they killed others to protect sorcerers and frighten people away from them. Albus justified that they never initiated the killing. The 13th told him they left behind dead bodies, claiming sacrifices were necessary to protect sorcerers. Albus became heated, asking if they were supposed to stand idle while humans attacked them. The 13th asked if he could confirm they hadn't harmed or wronged innocent people, but Albus remained silent. The 13th then said this is why wars happen. Albus replied that they were trying to stop the war and create a world where humans and sorcerers could live together, but the 13th pointed out that those who were out of control should be exiled to the wilderness, as leaving them unchecked had led to vagrant sorcerers burning villages and killing innocent people. Albus didn't deny his group's mistakes. The 13th explained that the kingdom's sorcerers were divided into three groups. Zero's group seeking peace, the vagrant sorcerers using magic for evil who were exiled from Zero's group, and the state sorcerers hunting both Zero and the vagrants, led by him. He confirmed his mission was to restore order, lead the obedient sorcerers, and control the rebels. He offered Albus to join him, promising power and knowledge, or else he would be burned at the stake. The mercenary objected because Albus was still a child, but the 13th insisted that his power posed a threat despite his youth. He gave Albus a night to consider the offer, and ordered Zero to return to the cave and wait for him there. She refused. Albus asked Zero if the book was really stolen, and she answered that he stole it and killed all the sorcerers who lived in the cave. She recounted that only she and the 13th survived from the cave. The mercenary asked why she wrote the book, and if she was trying to destroy the world. She answered that she wanted to develop magic power so everyone could use it, making the world accept sorcerers, but she made a mistake in writing it, and should have taken the 13th's warnings and burned it before it destroyed the world. Then the guards took Albus away, and the mercenary tried to convince him to accept the 13th's offer, but he ignored him. Zero walked behind the 13th, and asked why he wouldn't allow her mercenary to accompany them, but he hoped she hadn't made a contract with him, saying hiring a beast warrior was dangerous before making him a servant. He asked if she found him in the forest. She said yes, and that he became her servant when he deliberately wanted to give her his name. She quickly reprimanded him for depriving the Latit sorcerers of their magical powers. He replied that all this would end once the book was found. She insisted she would bear her sin and find it herself, without needing to taint other hands. At night, the mercenary thought Zero had abandoned Albus after his mission of guiding them was completed, meaning if he became useless to her, she would betray him too. Suddenly, a small mouse came to him, inviting him to talk and asking him to follow. It led him to the 13th, who apologized for frightening him. The mercenary asked if he could control any entity, even beasts, and he confirmed this. He explained that he summoned him to thank him for assisting Zero, and gave him a magic potion made by Zero. Once the stopper was removed, magical power would activate. If used on his beast body, he would return to being human. The mercenary confronted him, saying he was aware of the contract between him and Zero. The 13th replied that a beast taking orders from a sorceress voluntarily without material compensation made it easy to guess what he would take in return. The mercenary contemplated the potion in his hand and said if he took it, there would would be no reason for him to stay and protect Zero. The 13th told him Zero was a terrifying sorceress and this was his chance to escape. He should leave the castle immediately. Perhaps he was deceived by Zero's outer beauty, but he would be harmed by getting closer to her. The mercenary sharply replied that Zero didn't care about his head, but the 13th said she had summoned the highest levels of demons to create her techniques and learned much from them. She sacrificed beast heads to demons, and he wouldn't be special to her. The only reason he remained alive was his usefulness to her. Sorcerers with their power could plant feelings of goodwill in others' hearts, even in a beast warrior. He saw her eyes when she first met him, and saw him protecting her from the attack in the castle without thinking, due to her control over him. But perhaps his feelings would turn to slavery in the future, as everyone was ready to bow to her even in the caves, and he surely noticed that. But he was grateful to him for bringing her to him, as she was his colleague, and the last one who shared his homeland, so he thanked him. The mercenary was convinced by his words, saying he would use the potion after returning home. He entered his room and prepared to leave, opening the door to find Zero standing in front of him, looking at him and asking if he would leave without her, reminding him that today was the celebration of the gods. He was silent for a moment, so she asked why he was silent. He raised his weapon at her, saying she was good at pretending. She said the 13th had played his tricks and pulled her mercenary away from her. He replied that she had deceived him the whole time. She asked if the 13th told him she would kill him, and reminded him that she had given him a blood oath that she wouldn't kill him. If he wanted to escape, he could, and she wouldn't chase him. He left and saw two guards talking about waiting for church support. One mentioned that the church knights wouldn't provide help unless the kingdom showed faith in them, while the other thought the kingdom's knights and mercenaries might not be able to protect the capital. The first confirmed that the church believed burning sorcerers at the stake comforted people. As they talked, the mercenary passed by them, saying he undoubtedly hated sorcerers. One replied that sorcerers make others feel humble, never stop talking about food, and deserve to be burned. He continued wandering until he reached a drink cellar and ordered a bottle. When a beast tried to forcibly take a bottle, the mercenary knocked him to the ground. The bottle broke, so he paid for it and continued on his way. A beautiful girl stopped him, asking for help carrying a barrel of drinks to her tavern in exchange for hosting him with a free drink. He agreed and accompanied her. She explained that her father was busy preparing for the celebration and they had no workforce. She asked where he was staying, and he answered that he planned to leave immediately. She concluded that he hadn't come for witch hunting, and warned him that leaving at sunset would force him to sleep in the stable. She offered him to wait until her father prepared dinner, confirming she wouldn't cook because she was a bad cook. He commented that this explained their lack of customers. He took charge of preparing delicious dishes after asking about kitchen tools, then sat to eat. Impressed, she asked if he was really a mercenary or a traveling chef. He answered that he dreamed of opening a tavern in a rural village. She replied that serving customers wasn't easy, but he said he would return to his human life someday to achieve his dream of living peacefully. She encouraged him to expand his ambitions and dream of a huge tavern with many workers, luxurious decorations, and marrying a beautiful woman like her. He sarcastically replied that she couldn't cook. She said everyone knew her as the tavern beauty, so he asked her to let him finish his meal in peace. After dinner, they discussed the kingdom. She mentioned that conditions were unstable, and everyone was doing their best to live but was unable to make real change. She wondered why he didn't turn into a human if he could. Later, the mercenary settled on the second floor of the tavern, but a group of beasts entered and began harassing the girl. One claimed the service was poor and that they needed to be taught how to treat customers. Later, her father came, objecting to her hosting a beast on the second floor, but she explained that he had raised his hand against a beast who refused to pay. Her father asked if he could help them, and she answered that forcing another beast to expel them would prevent them from returning. Her father was sad about relying on a beast for protection, but she confirmed they had no choice until the witch hunt ended. The father noticed food leftovers and asked if she prepared them. She told him the mercenary cooked it. He was surprised she let him use their tools, but she reminded him what happens when beasts get hungry. They get cravings to eat human sand. Reminded him what happened to her mother. When she went to call him, she was surprised to find him standing behind them. He paid them and thanked them before leaving. In the cell, the 13th told Albus that Zero's sorcerers were no longer important, and he needed to make his decision or be executed. Despite his lack of experience, he had abilities that could help him, so he gave him a chance to live. During their conversation, Zero suddenly appeared, asking how he dared to take away her mercenary. As for the mercenary, he went to sleep in the open, but he sensed someone approaching. He calmly said the person could rob him if they wanted, but they wouldn't find anything valuable. The wolf appeared, saying he came to kill him, and asked if he had forgotten him. The mercenary said it seemed he hadn't learned his lesson yet, and offered to fight again. The beast replied that his opponent this time wasn't him. Suddenly, an enchanted arrow shot toward the mercenary, causing a powerful explosion. He shouted angrily, accusing the wolf of betrayal. In the castle, Zero was advancing toward the 13th, saying her mercenary had left as planned. When he saw her, he felt afraid and drew his sword against her. The 13th replied that he hadn't forced him to do anything but had merely given him advice, and he left of his own will. She said he had reinforced his suspicions about her, so he left. In the forest, the mercenary was dodging arrows chasing him, hiding among trees while arrows penetrated them, and the beast laughed victoriously, ordering the sorcerers to finish him off. But suddenly, an arrow pierced the beast's back. He shouted angrily, cursing the sorcerers as traitors who had broken the agreement. At the same moment, the mercenary suddenly stopped to block a powerful magical force with his sword. Meanwhile, Zero confronted the 13th sharply, threatening to leave the place. He confidently replied that he wouldn't allow her. She answered that she didn't need his permission, and began activating her magical energy to attack. He ordered her to retreat immediately, or he would stop her by force, but she didn't back down, saying whether he was from her homeland or not, he had taken something precious from her. In the forest, the mercenary was chasing the sorcerer and about to kill him, but suddenly a beam of light pierced his body. However, he wasn't hit and didn't bleed. Instead, it was Zero who bled and fell in front of the 13th, as she had used her magic to protect him from a distance. The mercenary was surprised that he wasn't injured, wondering what had happened. The 13th approached her, reprimanding her, and confirming that she should never have left the cave. He carried her and left the cell, while Albus asked what he would do with her, but he didn't answer. On the other side, the mercenary was about to devour the sorcerer, saying whoever hunts a beast should be prepared to die, but he suddenly stopped. Remembering Zero's words about having a human soul inside him, he let him go, warning him that he would kill him if they met again. He passed by the wolf that begged him to save it, but he replied that its death meant nothing to him, and he was sure it had brought the sorcerers in hopes of getting his head. The wolf cried out that it couldn't die now, for Serena had ordered it to protect her granddaughter. At that, the mercenary stopped walking, listening to what it would say. As for the 13th, he was taking care of Zero, muttering quietly that she didn't need to see this polluted world. The mercenary took the wolf to treat it, describing it as an annoying dog. The wolf replied that it wasn't a dog but a wolf, asking if he wanted an explanation of the difference. The mercenary responded that he didn't care. The wolf then told him that Serena herself had transformed it into a wolf. The mercenary was surprised and asked if it had been human before, which the wolf confirmed, explaining that it had chosen to become a beast. He had been a noble knight recognized in the kingdom, and perhaps the mercenary had noticed his knightly sword when they confronted each other. However, being the third son of a noble family, he had no right to inheritance, so he joined military service unwillingly. One day, while enjoying time with girls, a man carrying a sword entered, challenging him to a duel. He fled to the forest, where he met Serena, who was carrying a baby. When she approached him as he lay exhausted on the ground, he muttered that if death had a beautiful face, it would surely look like hers. She replied that she was Serena, the Moon Witch, and that his greeting was interesting. She offered him food, and he felt as if he had returned to life. He asked about the child, and she told him it was her granddaughter, whose parents had passed away, so she was caring for her alone. He offered to stay with her for a while to help with cooking or babysitting, but she refused, saying she didn't need a weak human servant. He asked her to turn him into a beast, but she ordered him to leave the forest and stop talking nonsense. He insisted and continued following her, pleading. At that moment, the baby grasped his small hair locks with her fingers. Serena noticed that the baby liked him and performed her rituals to turn him into a beast. The mercenary asked if he had feared sorcerers coming after his head, but the wolf replied that things were peaceful then. The mercenary agreed that the Winnia's sorcerers had only rebelled recently. The wolf commented that they were all weak and incapable of transforming humans into beasts, and those who bought beasts' heads were noblemen's wives and demon ritual enthusiasts. The mercenary then realized that Zero had no reason to seek his head. Meanwhile, the 13th was confronting Albus, who asked what had happened to Zero. The 13th ignored the question and asked for the last time if Albus would join him in purging sorcerers and ending the war, or burn at the stake. Albus asked if there were no other sorcerers, and the 13th replied that he knew why Albus was insisting. The wolf continued his story with the mercenary, explaining that he had lived a normal life with Serena, guarding her granddaughter, until one night when villagers gathered with torches. He informed Serena, who said she had explained to them that the epidemics were a misunderstanding, but they wouldn't calm down until they killed a witch. He suggested killing the villagers to protect her, but she refused, not wanting to become an evil witch. She ordered him to leave the forest with her granddaughter. He objected, but she confessed she was happy to have him as her servant, and asked him to take care of her granddaughter. He followed her request and fled with the child, while Serena was unjustly burned at the stake. The granddaughter then swore revenge and went her own way, while he secretly gathered information about her, later discovering she had joined Zero's sorcerers. The wolf told the mercenary that he had been searching for Zero's magic book for some time, and when he entered the sorcerer's hideout, he discovered that Serena's granddaughter had escaped with the book and someone called him. The wolf explained that him, or the leader, never showed his face, so the book was likely with Serena's granddaughter. The wolf asked the mercenary why he was looking for the book, and he replied that he wanted to give it to his employer, though he wasn't sure if she would forgive him. Meanwhile, Zero was waking up in bed, placing her hand on her wound bandages, muttering in annoyance that the 13th was still unskilled in healing magic. She tried to open her room door but failed, as the 13th had sealed it with a magical barrier, anticipating her escape attempt. The wolf continued talking with the mercenary, explaining that Serena was different from Zero's sorcerers. She believed in the greatness of magic magic but thought it wasn't being spread properly, which is why him burned her at the stake. The mercenary was confused, saying the villagers burned her because of the epidemic, but the wolf clarified that him deliberately created a misunderstanding with the villagers and trapped her. Although he had no proof, he was confident of this. On the other side, Albus was opposing the 13th, who wanted to eliminate all sorcerers, even those seeking peace, arguing that some used magic for evil. The 13th replied that humans see all sorcerers as the same, not distinguishing between good and bad ones. Albus insisted on only eliminating rebellious sorcerers and spreading magic as Serena intended, so sorcerers and humans could live together. Their argument intensified until Albus ordered the 13th never to show his face again. The 13th responded that he would use his life to support his cause until the end. Meanwhile, the mercenary was walking with the wolf, who asked about his employer because he smelled Serena's granddaughter on her. This was unusual, as sorcerers typically smell of herbs and incense, but he detected a different scent. Before the mercenary could answer, the wolf noticed several carriages passing by and alerted the mercenary, who took off quickly, saying the plan had changed and they needed to go to Plasta first. When the wolf asked why, the mercenary replied that the foolish boy, referring to Albus, had disobeyed the 13th's orders and would be executed. He ran at full speed, bypassing the crowd, and climbed the castle roof, while the wolf thought about the need to find Serena's granddaughter. Then Albus appeared, tied to the stake. When the wolf saw him, he said it was Serena's granddaughter, but the mercenary denied it, insisting he was just a boy. The wolf, however, stood firm in his belief. Just as the 13th began lighting the fire, the wolf raced toward Albus, cutting through the crowd, with the mercenary behind him, who ordered the wolf to bring Albus while he created chaos. He threw a hand grenade, causing disorder in the area. At the same time, the wolf rushed to the stake, jumped on it, and carried Albus away before fleeing quickly. But the 13th noticed the mercenary and ordered his restraint, though the mercenary managed to escape and join the wolf. As they fled, soldiers pursued them, but the mercenary threw whatever he could find in the cart to lighten the load and impede their progress. The pursuit continued until the cart fell into the sea, forcing the soldiers to retreat, while the mercenary, the wolf, and Albus made it to shore. It was then that the mercenary learned the truth. Albus was Serena's granddaughter. In the cave, the wolf asked the mercenary when his sudden craving for eating humans began, guessing he saw him trying to eat the sorcerer. They then discussed Serena's granddaughter, and the mercenary wondered why Albus had to dress as the opposite gender and pretend to be a man. The wolf explained it was because of the 13th. If he smelled Serena's blood, it would cause trouble for Albus. The granddaughter woke up, and the wolf ran and hugged her, but she smashed his face. He complained, and she explained she did it because he surprised her. The mercenary intervened, saying, "Who knew she was a girl?" The granddaughter replied they were even, as he had also lied to her. Her only concern was Zero's book, and since it wasn't with her, someone must have taken it from Ladit's hideout. The mercenary asked if she was ready to be burned alive rather than assist the 13th, and she answered that his methods were terrible, as he killed vagrant sorcerers and Zero's sorcerers. The mercenary pointed out that the 13th was right. Humans don't distinguish between good and bad sorcerers. The granddaughter replied she would convince Zero's sorcerers to defeat him, the book thief, fight vagrant sorcerers, and suppress the war. The wolf objected, saying it was impossible. Meanwhile, Zero complained about the soup, joking to the 13th that if he intended to kill her with soup, he would succeed soon. He replied it was the same soup as the king's, and he couldn't do anything about it, adding that her death would cause him problems. She ordered him to release her, mentioning she knew a man who made the most delicious soup. The wolf told the granddaughter they couldn't touch him because of the blood contract. Everyone who joined him signed a blood contract, and breaking it meant death. She confirmed this was true, and even she had signed it. She began treating him with her magical power, and they discussed Zero and her book. The mercenary suggested eliminating magic and defeating Zero's sorcerers and vagrant sorcerers. That's when Albus had an idea, remembering that Zero could nullify magic. She devised a plan to surround all of Winius with a magic circle, having Zero nullify it, thereby eliminating magic throughout the kingdom. The wolf said this would allow them to defeat vagrant sorcerers, him, and the 13th without harming anyone. She replied that afterward, they could spread magic properly again, but they needed Zero, who had collapsed after the 13th's attack, and was taken to an unknown location. Zero complained to the 13th about the terrible bed, and he told her he made it to resemble the one in the cave. She informed him she had recently found a whiter, softer, and larger bed, but he had disposed of it. The mercenary asked where Zero was, and Albus replied she didn't know, and they needed to find her quickly. She asked if he had a hair or nail of hers to use in a person-finding spell, like the old woman did. They remembered her tattered clothes at the clothing sellers, and decided to get them to track her. However, they sensed the presence of the 13th's assassins, all possessing magical power. The mercenary threw explosives at them, and the three rushed to escape, with the assassins in pursuit. One of the assassins hit the wolf, wolf, causing him to stumble, so Albus fired a light arrow at them, allowing the wolf to run again. One assassin ordered his companions not to let them escape, then released his magical power, causing numerous magical bombs to explode in their path. They continued running until they were surprised by rocks collapsing in front of them. The mercenary ordered the wolf to run first and jump over the barrier before the place completely collapsed, then threw Albus to him and followed. The wolf scolded him for his reckless action, and at that moment, an assassin attacked from behind, but the wolf quickly threw his weapon at him, knocking him down. The mercenary reached Formicum's gate, where the previous two guards asked about his slaves. He joked that they were delicious, and he needed to enter to reach the innkeeper and eat, as he couldn't wait until morning. The guards were suspicious, and thought he was affected by the sudden craving, but he managed to pass through quickly. The three reached the clothing store, where they found the seller had hung Zero's clothes on the wall and was drinking wine in front of them, expressing his joy at looking at them. The mercenary broke in, handed him a bag of money, and took down Zero's clothes, saying he would reclaim them. The seller resisted, declaring he couldn't live without her clothes. The wolf then tied him to the ground, drew a magic circle he had learned from Serena, and they placed Zero's clothes inside it. The merchant shouted that if they were going to burn the clothes, they should burn him with them. The mercenary muffled his mouth, and Albs began her rituals. She discovered that Zero was in the royal palace in Plasta, at the highest tower. The mercenary decided to rescue her, while the wolf and Albs began drawing magic circles. Afterward, they gathered to precisely locate Zero based on Albs hearing birds near her. The wolf confirmed she was in Dawn Tower, where swallow flocks nest there annually at the same time, according to his experience as a former palace worker. The mercenary pointed out that the palace defenses strengthen in the morning, and they would be in trouble. He had to climb the tower with his daggers, as there was no other way. During the climb, the mercenary cursed the wolf, saying this wasn't an easy task for a heavy person like him. He almost fell but clung on at the last moment. Meanwhile, Albs finished drawing magic circles on the trees, but suddenly heard Sorcerer's footsteps, and the wolf urged her to flee. The mercenary continued climbing the tower until he reached the windows, but suddenly lost his balance and fell. At that moment, Albs discovered the newcomers were Zero's sorcerers, who told her that he had directed them to her location after learning of her escape from execution. They announced they would support her and fight the final battle to overthrow the Plastic Kingdom with their power. However, she explained she wanted to seal the magic burning the kingdom, so they turned against her, confirming that he had expected this from her, and from that moment, she would be considered a traitor. She tried to calm them, but they insisted her fate would be determined in a fair trial before Zero's sorcerers, where she could present her explanation. The wolf convinced her to surrender, pointing out they could draw the circles again, but she couldn't die like this. Zero's sorcerers erased the circles she had drawn, and took her and the wolf with them, while the mercenary resumed climbing the tower again. The mercenary confronted Zero, but she ordered him to retreat immediately. When he told her he came to rescue her, she replied she didn't need his rescue. He explained he spent a long time climbing the cliff to reach her, so he couldn't back down now, but she insisted he could return the same way he came. She approached and pinched his ear, asking why he didn't understand, confirming he had fallen into the 13th trap. He asked for an explanation, but she answered that their contract had ended and he was no longer her mercenary for her to explain. He objected, saying she couldn't suddenly end the contract, and she replied that he was the one who ran away. He explained that the 13th had deceived him, and she confronted him about being afraid of her. He didn't deny it, saying it was impossible for a mercenary not to fear a witch. He added that he was always suspicious of others, but had returned now to settle things. Suddenly, Zero's tears fell on his hands, and she confessed she let him go because she saw his fear of her, but felt upset about it. It would have been easy for her to bind him to her forever, but she knew his hatred for sorcerers. As he tried to calm her and began speaking about Albs's plan, they were forcibly summoned, and she screamed that it was a trap as they fell into the depths. Elsewhere, Albs tried to convince Zero's sorcerers to seal the magic, explaining that Zero could end it without harming anyone. They refused, insisting they couldn't seal their power before the battle. At the same time, a message reached Zero's group stating that at sunrise in 2 days, all sorcerers would attack the state sorcerer. On the other side, the 13th appeared before the mercenary, having imprisoned Zero in an iron cage. He asked her to close her eyes and ears until he finished dealing with the mercenary, but she screamed, demanding her mercenary back immediately, and tried using her magic. He told her she couldn't escape the magical barrier trapping her, and should remain calm until he killed the mercenary. The mercenary tried convincing him that if Zero canceled the magic, the sorcerer's war would end, and afterward he would take the book and him, so he should let them leave. But the 13th replied there was no need for Zero to leave or cancel the magic. Zero then said the 13th didn't want the magic book or to end the chaos in Winius. The mercenary asked, didn't the 13th leave to get the book? But he was surprised to learn the 13th already had it. Zero explained that to eliminate people's fear of sorcerers, evil sorcerers are created and then destroyed. The 13th himself was him, the hidden leader, the book thief, the one who spread magic in Wenius, and the creator of vagrant sorcerers. He joined the kingdom to oppose sorcerers, while secretly leading them. Elsewhere, Zero's sorcerers ordered the wolf's head and arms cut off for sacrifice in their battle. The mercenary tried attacking the 13th, but he pointed his staff at him, forcing him to kneel. When the mercenary asked why, the 13th answered he had warned him he could control any creature's Victor's abilities. The mercenary shouted angrily, but the 13th replied his anger wouldn't change anything. True, he paved the way for this battle, but the country's sorcerers made their own decisions. Opposition was growing in secret, and rebellion would have happened sooner or later. All he did was accelerate it. He didn't need to incite Zero's sorcerers, just spread magic in Wenius. They already had motivation from the beginning, and sought revenge on humanity in Sarina's name. So he had to play the role of state sorcerer because creating a new kingdom from war is ugly. He didn't want Zero to know that and wanted her to wait in the cave until it was over, after which she would have the final decision. She wanted everyone to live comfortably with her book, but he warned her it would destroy the world. Despite this, she persisted in her dream, and now he would fulfill it his way. It was time to create the state, and sorcerers would come to overthrow him in response to Sarina's descendants' call, but they would be destroyed by the blood contract, because he was simply him. Zero was puzzled by his plan to kill sorcerers in her name. Elsewhere, one of Zero's sorcerers untied the wolf and told him he would announce his death. He admitted he didn't believe canceling the magic would work, but didn't mind them trying, while they would confront the 13th as he ordered. Their methods might differ, but the goal was the same. Meanwhile, the 13th confessed the epidemic spread due to an unexpected sorcerer's experiment, and Sarina tried to suppress epidemics but was unjustly killed. The mercenary accused him of killing Albs' family and Zero's companions in the caves. The 13th replied that the cave companions spent their lives in boring discussions, so their deaths weren't different from their lives, and Zero was the only exception. He had suggested letting her see the outside world, but they refused out of fear of her power and decided to leave her alone. The mercenary asked, "If Zero asked your opinion about what you did, what would you say? You took away her companions and made her lonely." The 13th replied he did it all for her. The mercenary angrily responded that he was just an arrogant, selfish, crazy sorcerer who couldn't understand Zero. The mercenary suddenly regained his strength and rushed to attack the 13th, saying he was still the witch's mercenary and would claim his reward by returning human. As he advanced, Zero screamed to warn him not to move forward, but he entered a magic circle drawn by the 13th. The 13th smiled, saying he had won, but the mercenary threw the magic jar toward Zero's cage. The magic exploded, and Zero escaped the cage. The 13th cursed him and warned Zero against fighting him, but she coldly asked, had he forgotten why she was Zero, and he was the 13th? He replied he knew she was the clay sorceress, capable of creating everything from nothing, and so, both began a magic duel. Both Zero and the 13th recited their spells, releasing tremendous magical energy, while the mercenary stood watching. Zero skillfully deflected the 13th's magic, surprising him with her strength exceeding his expectations. The 13th fell to the ground, bleeding from his mouth, unable to face her. The mercenary rushed to stop Zero, demanding she not kill him, and threw himself on the 13th to protect him. Suddenly, destructive energy burst from the tower, and Zero collapsed to the ground, exhausted and bleeding. The mercenary wondered what happened, while Zero's sorcerers appeared in the forest, determined to eliminate the 13th after capturing Albs. They received a message that more sorcerers had joined their ranks, but Albs questioned if they believed victory would be theirs. One answered they would win with him's guidance. She warned them the 13th might be setting a trap, but they believed killing him would end everything. Meanwhile, the old sorcerers gathered, and Albs introduced herself as Sarina's granddaughter, trying to convince them to join her cause. They asked why she was absent during the attack. One explained she left during their most difficult time. She justified her absence, saying she was searching for a sacrifice to increase her power and qualify her to lead them, but they had already decided to confront the enemy. The 13th revealed to the mercenary that Zero had previously drawn a curse spell on him, transferring his wounds to her. The mercenary remembered when Zero cared for him while bathing and found it impossible, but the 13th assured him the spell would only break if Zero decided herself or if he died inside a barrier. The mercenary finally realized why wounds he sustained during battles healed without treatment. The 13th recalled his first meeting with Zero when she asked about the outside world, why sorcerers hid from humans, and her interest in his book despite his chaotic handwriting. Her dream was to write a book that would change the world, and when she began writing it, he was always by her side supporting her. Zero awakened and asked the men why they looked at her with pity. The mercenary reassured her and asked about her condition. She replied she had a minor injury but learned a lesson about arrogance, as she almost killed the 13th due to not controlling her power, and without his intervention, she would have become a murderer. When the 13th asked about her power, she explained she deliberately wrote errors in Zero's book spells, making it impossible for her magic to be defeated using it, confirming she was an exceptional sorceress. Now, having exposed his plans, she decided to seal Wenius Kingdom's magic and end the book. The 13th told her he intended to take over the kingdom to give it to her, thinking she wanted that, but realized it wasn't good for the country and was now ready to do what she wanted. On the other side, Kingdom Knights raided Zero's sorcerer's camp, and the sorcerer leader ordered troops to form for attack. The wolf freed Albs and took her to escape, but a sorcerer pursued them. Albs cast a spell, allowing the wolf to tie the sorcerer to a tree, and she took out a circle diagram, saying only 4 circles remained. The bound sorcerer asked why she betrayed them, and she replied she hadn't betrayed them but wanted to end everything. Suddenly, a light arrow shot shot toward her, pinning her diagram to the tree. The wolf carried her and escaped. In the castle, the 13th used his staff to monitor the situation and learn the sorcerer's location. He told Zero and the mercenary that Albs was about to die, so Zero rushed to save her, carried by the mercenary to keep up with his speed. Meanwhile, the sorcerers discussed how to stop Albs and her servant, deciding to send assassins after them. Suddenly, Albs and the wolf were surrounded, and the sorcerers aimed light arrows at them, but Zero intervened just in time, canceling the magic to save them. Albs was surprised to see the 13th accompanying Zero and the mercenary. Through the gems he'd given to the wizards, he found out that the plague was just the result of some rookie wizards messing up an experiment. The villagers were scared and thought Serena would ditch them, but she did the opposite. The wolf shot back that Serena chose to get burned at the stake to save him and Albus. The 13th said she knew her death would get the Venius wizards all riled up and start a war, so she probably had some plan behind it. The mercenary cut in, saying their main job now was to stop the war. They split into 3 groups and planned to meet up again after drawing the circles. The mercenary told Albus to come back no matter what, and they headed out to do the plan. Right then, the Zero wizards were attacking the Formicam gate, while the guards tried to fight them off and get civilians out of there. In Plasta, the city was getting attacked too, and the wizard leader said they were after the 13th, not regular people. The king and his soldiers looked for the state wizard but couldn't find him. The king got mad and said the wizard had bailed on them when they needed him most, and trusting him from the start was a mistake. Everyone finished drawing their circles, and the wolf tried to kill the 13th to get revenge for Serena's death, but right when he was about to stab him in the head, he stopped. He realized wizards live really long lives, so the real punishment would be making him live with guilt forever. Everyone showed up except Albus, and the 13th and Zero started the ritual, waiting for her. All of a sudden, the wizards felt 2 huge magical forces coming from far away and sent their beasts toward them. In Plasta, the wizards wanted the state wizard to surrender, but the force commander saw a chance to wipe them out, and fighting broke out. Meanwhile, the mercenary and the wolf fought the beasts with their swords, while the 13th focused on blocking the wizard's arrows with a magic barrier to protect himself and Zero during the ritual. The 13th and Zero got the ritual ready, but everyone waited for Albus, who finally showed up saying she got a little lost. Zero asked the mercenary to use his head as an offering to the demon connected to the Zero book. She promised she wouldn't kill him and that he should trust her. He said no at first, but then did what she asked, and the 3 started the ritual, saying the magic words. A huge magic circle lit up and covered the area, and the mercenary passed out. Albus then decided to become a good leader who would make Venius better, like her grandmother wanted. 3 days later, the mercenary woke up feeling like a demon had taken over his body. Zero told him he was okay, and the kingdom was having a party outside to celebrate getting rid of the wizards. She'd finally gotten her book back, but he reminded her she promised to turn him back into a human, and she said that wasn't possible anymore. She'd summoned a demon during the sealing ritual, which made his body merge more with the beast's spirit, and her magic got weaker and needed time to get better. The mercenary was shocked since this wasn't what they agreed on, but she asked him to be patient and said he needed to keep protecting her so the magic wouldn't spread somewhere else. After the war ended, Albus became the state wizard and sentenced the 13th to get burned at the stake as punishment for causing all the trouble. But it was just a trick. She secretly planned to save him because she figured another magical threat would show up later that they'd need to deal with. Finally, the mercenary and Zero got travel permits to go other places, and Albus wanted to come with them, but the wolf reminded her she was the state wizard now and couldn't leave. The 13th asked Zero if she'd go back to the caves, but she said she'd go with her mercenary. The 13th said goodbye to them, while Albus hugged the mercenary goodbye. Right then, the wolf pulled out his sword and threatened the mercenary, saying he'd pay for hugging Albus, and started chasing him. The mercenary defended himself, saying Albus started the hug. Zero caught up and joked that he could make up for it by kissing her, but he said he thought she loved the 13th. She explained that the 13th was like a big brother to her, and they kept running, ready to start a new adventure.